We haven't even reached the party conventions, but we've had the first debate between a current president and a former one. We'll drill into the debate, one that Democrats fear was a disaster. Today is Sunday, June 30th, 2024, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. Good to have you with us as we arrive at the last day of June, the nation's 248th birthday, just 4 days away. And the future of that nation is very much on our minds after Thursday night's debate between President Biden and former President Trump. A lot of people watching this showdown, despite the fact that it's a matchup that most voters insist they don't really want. Well, what did you think? It was a wide-ranging 90 minutes, a lot of topics, domestic and foreign, but the take from many reminded me of the 1960 debate between John Kennedy and Richard Nixon. I'm not sure how much substance anyone took from that night. All anyone could talk about was Nixon's shifty, sweaty performance, sans makeup. Thursday night, even Democrats were filling social media with their dismay at President Biden's raspy, weak voice and, frankly, looking lost often. On the other hand, as CNN's John King said, Donald Trump broke the fact-check machine. So no surprise that the take for many, especially as the two were arguing over their golf handicaps, was that they still really don't like their choices. And yet here we are, 2 weeks away from the Republican convention in Milwaukee. Does any of what happened on Thursday night move the needle, especially among Democrats? We're going to talk about that today on Flashpoint. Let's talk about the debate that is not only being talked about this weekend. I assume it's going to be talked about for a very long time, perhaps years. Joining me from the Detroit News editorial page editor Nolan Fenley, my colleague here at Local 4 and often host of Flashpoint, Christy McDonald is here. Editorial page editor at the Detroit Free Press is Nancy Caffern. From WDET, the host of Created Equal, Stephen Henderson. Stephen, I'll start with you. There was very little point in a spin room last night, it seemed, because even many of the president's supporters just seemed very disheartened and dismayed at what happened.
Well, I mean, if you were a Democrat or you're a supporter of Biden, this was your worst nightmare, right? I mean, everything that people have said about his age and his focus and his ability to present, came true on the stage last night and Thursday night, and it's just not something you can explain away. I mean, everyone saw what they saw. There is no way to spin it.
We'll get to what is ahead in a minute. Let me let everybody weigh in first on what they saw. Nancy, I know that you were telling me that it was crazy, some of the things that Donald Trump was able to say and get away with, but that wasn't the headline.
Yeah, Biden looked bad. He sounded raspy. Most of what he said, he had a couple of missteps. Most of what he said, if you were reading a transcript, you'd be like, this was fine. The delivery was not good. Donald Trump, though, you've got him up there telling the most outrageous, absolutely bonkers stories. Like, he said repeatedly that in America, particularly in Virginia, babies are sometimes killed after they've been born, which is just absolutely not true, totally unchallenged by any of the moderators. But we've got this weird scale where Trump is so out of the norm that no one can really offer a meaningful critique. So instead we're all, and then Biden in crisis, which, again, Biden's performance left a lot to be desired. But then we have this person just saying just insane things over here.
As I said earlier, John King said that Donald Trump kind of broke the fact-check machine last night. But was it up to the moderators, Christy, you think, or was it up to Joe Biden to do the fact-check?
I think it's really interesting because I think when you hear that, you're looking for someone to come back in this debate format. And what they agreed on, it was going to be the candidates fact-checking each other at this point. The moderators were the ones giving the time, cutting them off. And there's where I think the debate actually worked. You might not have liked what you saw from both candidates, and I think that's what we're hearing millions of people say. But the way they controlled the microphones, CNN, the way
cutting
they
them
cut
off
them
if
off.
It wasn't your time.
You remember 2020? That was a disaster. One of the worst debates in presidential history that we've seen. So cutting those mics really cut back on, I think, the bizarre back and forth that we saw 4 years ago. That worked. Also, when you see the comparison of candidates, and that's really what this debate was all about, that split screen, whether you liked it or not, it gave a full picture. And then the moderator moderators did come back at a couple times and say, "You've got 48 seconds left. Can you address this
You
question?"
ask the
It was
question.
cringy at some point. You've got 82 seconds left. I was like sweating.
Yeah.
But so there were aspects of the debate overall, the process
You
of
were
it
okay
that
with the
worked.
moderators not fact-checking as much as a lot of people seem to want them to.
No, because I believe that was what
That
the
was the
agreement.
format.
Yeah, that was the format.
And how could they? I mean, there was not much.
As somebody who's posted a lot of debates, fact-checking in real time is really difficult.
And that wasn't a fountain of veracity on that stage. I mean, you have Biden out there distorting unemployment numbers when he took office, claiming no soldiers have died under his watch. There wasn't much truth-telling done. But that wasn't the point of last night. I mean, the point of that early debate was just for Joe Biden to stand up and prove that the president you saw at the State of the Union address is still the president today and will be tomorrow. And he absolutely failed at that. And I think to the benefit of the Democratic Party.
I mean, I think one of the things.
Hold it. To the benefit of the Democratic
Absolutely.
Party?
I mean, Joe Biden has not been able to pull away from perhaps the worst Republican candidate ever, Donald Trump. I mean, they're locked neck and neck. He is at real risk of losing to Donald Trump and taking the Democratic Party down with him. This now gives Democrats an opening to replace Biden on the ballot and win this election. They've still got time.
Stephen, I believe you predicted on this program long ago that by the time we got to the convention, things would be different. Do you feel that way today?
I think it's more likely today. I mean, I think if the Democrats want to win, they really have to think about whether Joe Biden is the right candidate. And that's unfortunate because it is about his candidacy. It's actually not about his presidency. If he had been able to stand up last night and really talk about the record that he's been able to compile over the last 4 years and do it with confidence, I think he would have owned Donald Trump. The things that they have been able to do in the White House are really formidable, but that's not the only thing that people think about when they think about the president. And they want somebody who seems like they're on it and seems like they're able to have, make quick decisions and react to things. He just seemed out of it in the debate, and I think that cost him.
And I'll point out his speech on Friday following the debate was very robust and probably said everything that he was supposed to say that night, but on a teleprompter, different situation, more managed, not face-to-face with somebody. So, Nancy, I guess, are you buying Nolan's idea that this is a good thing for Democrats and a blessing in disguise?
I'm not going to try to read the tea leaves on that one, but I don't think there's any way to spin this as good. I mean, even if it led to a different outcome, it's still a pretty low moment. I mean,
It was sad. It was hard to watch at times.
It was. Indeed, it was.
No matter, and that's no matter how, this was the president of the United States, so no matter how you feel, and you have to project out. We don't elect somebody for tomorrow. We're electing somebody for 4 years.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and it's not. It just was really hard to watch.
Yeah.
And I think to that point, when you say electing someone for the next 4 years, I think what was also disappointing about the messaging, and I watched the debate with 2 teenagers at my house who are going to be voting, is they kept asking, well, what's he going to do? And so no one was really projecting forward and saying, in the next 4 years, I want to work on this, this, and this, coming off of my record or when I had served and done that. That was a disappointment, too. So when you look at that messaging, they're, arguing over loser and sucker. They started talking about their golf game near the end.
Golf handicaps.
And that's when my teens walked out of the room. So when you look overall on both sides and the messaging and what could have been for this debate at a very pivotal time in the country, there was a missed opportunity there on both sides.
Yeah, that was when I thought when we reached Max old white man when we're talking about golf handicaps. But
and their heights and weights.
Yes,
No way you went 245 miles away.
To be fair,
are we at the barber shop?
These are both subjects that Trump introduced, and then Biden went with them. But these are not things that come up between normal politicians.
This was all Biden last night. Nothing Trump did, said, or matter. I mean, if you take what Trump said and separate it out, you're thinking, what the heck is this all about? It was all about Biden.
Well,
he was so bad that nobody noticed.
Then let me flip
else.
it around. Is it in Donald Trump's best interest to carry Joe Biden for a few rounds? Or, I mean, isn't he better off facing Joe Biden than he is, let's start ticking off the names, Whitmer, Newsom, Shapiro?
No, I mean, he's a lot worse off. And so, I was sitting there thinking, as I always think when he talks, why don't you just shut up and let Biden go here? Because you're not helping yourself, but he's helping you a great deal. Just shut up and, give those 89 seconds back to him, because he wasn't handling it very well. But I'm not worried as much. I am worried, but I'm not as much about the next 4 years as I am the next 7 months. And the president we saw on that stage last night is in no shape to respond to an emergency, to a crisis, to a moment that requires cogent leadership. He's not in a position to do that.
You feel that way, Stephen, or is this more a function of debate as a weird, different kind of thing?
I guess I don't know. I mean, I do think there's a difference between the presidency and the candidacy, right? Campaigning is really different from governing. When he's governing, he has an incredible array of smart people around him all the time. And look, this is an administration that has assembled a really great team around the president. That's part of the decision-making process there. I also don't know, did he just have a bad night? Was this just the wrong setting, or they said he was sick, or you don't know what caused it.
Well,
but
you can't have a bad night in the national championship
game. It doesn't matter,
because
right?
That's
it doesn't matter to the voters. I mean,
yeah.
This was their first chance to really see him unscripted, defend his record and talk about what he'd do for the next 4 years, and he couldn't do it.
I mentioned the names of. I should also Kamala Harris, of course, in there as well. Can you see a path forward for Democrats to replace Joe Biden as their candidate?
Well, I think that really is down to him, right? Like, he has to step aside, and then there has to be consensus from several of the other folks that you mentioned. I don't see how you leapfrog Kamala Harris unless she's enthusiastically urging another person to be in her place. I don't see how you push Biden aside without angering. We hear a lot from people who would like him off the ticket. There's always a silent group out there that feels differently. What are all these trade-offs? Who do you please? Who do you anger by doing these various things?
Christy, you and I have followed and covered a lot of conventions that always basically come across as an infomercial. Sure. Don't we kind of covet the idea of one that might be a little bit different? I don't know, is that possible?
I think it's going to be very interesting what we're going to see happen in the next couple of weeks. What I really think about, too, is how this is going to impact Michigan when I woke up this morning. So I immediately thought of Gretchen Whitmer and the advanced copy of her book that is on my desk right now, and the Simon & Schuster people that are reaching out to set up the interviews and the national kind of view of this. And I'm also thinking about down ticket and what this kind of could mean in terms of the shakiness, what this could mean for the open Senate seat. Does this start to shift how things look here in the state of Michigan as well? I think that's something that we need to watch.
Great questions.
And I think that's on the minds of a lot of Democrats. I think there's no question that Gretchen Whitmer is among those in the bullpen warming up right now. And, this book turns out to be well-timed, I think intentionally so. But,
do you think there was an accident?
If Democrats start reading these polls, and it looks like Joe Biden is going to wipe them out, the urgency of this, of getting him off the ticket, will grow, and the voices will get louder. It was remarkable Friday morning to wake up and hear all the angst from Democrats and all the suggestions. Well, it's up to Joe, but, maybe he will go. I mean, there wasn't a full-throated defense mounted by hardly anyone other than those who are most often mentioned to replace him.
Stephen, what happens from here?
Open convention. I've been saying it for months now that he's gonna decline the nomination, and we'll have a floor fight, which Kamala Harris would be part of, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, and we'll go from there. I'm sticking by that early call.
And where does this leave Mr. Kennedy? Is there an opening now? Does it give him more space?
Hopefully far, far, far away.
I'm wishing that worm hadn't ate his brain, because I'm looking for somebody to vote for.
Thanks, Fritz, for the conversation. We'll continue with more on this. CNN was with some Michigan voters right after the debate on Thursday night. We'll hear from them and our pollster, Richard Zuba, when we come right back. Now, along with hosting the debate Thursday night, CNN dispatched reporter Laura Coates to Michigan to watch the debate with a group of voters. She was in Warren. Here's just a little of her post-debate report.
I want to ask the people who are with me here today, many of you came in undecided. In fact, most of you, by watching this debate, a show of hands, how many of you have now made up your mind? This is unbelievable to think about how impactful and influential this very moment was. I want to get a sense from all of you. We were all watching the appearance of the two candidates. What did you make of how they both performed and the way that they were appearing in the camera and beyond? Who had a strong reaction, especially to the age component?
I would have to say, after watching the debate and watching how Biden handled himself and answering the questions, it reassured me of his unassurance, be able to lead our country. I'm concerned he was hesitant, very not cognitive. Seemed like his data, he was missing his numbers. So very concerning. That's somebody I don't think that needs to lead our country.
Does anyone share that same opinion? A couple of you do. Who does not? Let me ask you.
One of the big things that a lot of people forget, when we are typically speaking in day-to-day life, we tend to stutter as well. So sometimes it will take time to be able to think about what you're going to say. But regardless, when it comes to a strong leader and what we're looking for in a leader, I'm looking for somebody that I trust to be able to uphold policies that will protect me and are more concerned for the general well-being of everybody in the United States, which I got more from Biden, considering he did a lot more talking about policies, what he's done and what he plans to do. Whereas on the other side from Trump, all I really heard was, I've done this and it was the best ever, but I never heard what it was. Or I heard that Biden was the worst ever, but I never heard why. So there was a lot that was left unclear for me. So while he may have appeared like a stronger candidate, on paper, there was a lot missing in terms of actual debate.
Now, also note there was a mother in that group who was disgusted that her 3 teenage sons had to hear 2 men arguing about sleeping with a porn star. Joining me now, our pollster, Richard Zuba from the Glengarriff Group. Richard, first off, let me give me your thoughts on what we saw on Thursday night.
I think it was not a good night for Joe Biden. I think that's, kind of a given at this point.
Yeah.
But debates have a way of needing some time to play out. And I think that's one thing we're going to be watching here is how does this play out over the longer term? And we don't know that yet.
I often feel like debates are sort of the way I feel about vice presidential choices. They probably can't win you an election, but every once in a while they might lose you an election. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the role that debates play, especially when we're 5 months away from Election Day? What role do you expect that these debates can play in people ultimately making their decisions?
Well, I think debates play a big role in the question of a campaign narrative. And in this case, the reason this debate was bad for Biden was it fed into a narrative that he is too old. He came off as very halting, very stuttering. It fed the negative narrative against him. At the same time, there were 2 people on that stage. And I don't think Donald Trump did anything to help gain voters. But in this case, what we have to watch is, does Joe Biden start to lose voters? And that's going to be something we keep our eyes on.
Well, and you and I have talked a lot about voter motivation. The thumbnail seems to be that Donald Trump's people are going to be there no matter what, that maybe Joe Biden's support can be a little bit less committed and a little more wobbly, right? I mean, this is about motivation and turnout.
Well, I think this is, as I came out of this debate, I focused on what I call the 3 M's: margins, the middle, and motivation. Those are the key factors here. This race is very, very close right now. And any shift in the margins will impact the race. The middle, that's who's going to make these decisions. And we cannot forget, there are other candidates on the ballot, particularly Kennedy. And he is going to be an attraction to those double haters who dislike both candidates. And, motivation. This is going to be central. We saw in 2016 how motivation to vote was at the lowest level we'd ever seen. I want to see if motivation to vote starts to drop amongst voters, or does it remain as high as we've seen here in the last couple of months?
Give me your thoughts then on what is the likelihood that there is a change of candidate for the Democrats. Joe Biden came out the day after the debate, gave a pretty stirring speech that seemed to be a much better performance than the night before, but seemed to indicate that he has no intention of stepping aside, even as we know that Republican strategists and, importantly, we'll point out, donors are really starting to worry.
I think it's a pipe dream. You know, we have to look at the fact that this has never happened in our lifetime before.
Right.
That so close to an election, a convention gets opened up. If it did, Katie barred the door. This would be a historic moment. But I think it is almost certainly not going to happen. Joe Biden would have to agree to step down. And I don't see him doing it. And I certainly don't see anybody in the Democratic side having what I call that Howard Baker moment, that moment where they go to him and say, you need to step aside.
We got about 30 seconds left here. To Christy McDonald's point from a few moments ago, what does this mean down ticket? The ramifications, we know we've got a huge Senate race here, along, of course, with the usual fights for control of the State House.
Well, that's where I think motivation to vote is going to be particularly important. You know, we don't know. There may be people who undercount the vote, and by that we mean they don't vote in the presidential race and work their way down the rest of the ticket. There may also be a hit in motivation for Biden supporters if his performance does not improve.
Yeah.
We have months to go yet. We can't forget that. There are months to go in this race. And just like last night was jarring to the campaign, we are going to have many days that are jarring to the campaign that we do not know what's going to happen.
Mindful again that it is a marathon and not a sprint, though we tend to like to break it down into maybe a group of sprints. Richard, looking forward to your next batch of numbers, that's for sure. Thanks very much for the time today.
You're welcome.
You bet. Richard Zuba of the Glenn Gariff Group will wrap things up for Flashpoint right after this. Well, I certainly hadn't planned on spending all of this program on Thursday night's debate. And in fact, you know, I won't, because we've got some family business to attend to. Finally, this morning, as you may know, we've got a big group of very talented and venerable members of the Local 4 family leaving the station in a round of voluntary retirement packages too good to pass up for many. And tomorrow is their effective retirement date. We are saying so long to three fabulous reporters, Paula Tutman, Rod Maloney, and Mara McDonald, who has filled in as host on this program. We're saying so long to the legendary Bernie Smilowitz, who has been my dear friend and partner on our news desk for nearly 30 years. But there are quite a few others, and they include three people who have long been integral to this program. Technical Director Dick Levine is pushing the buttons at this moment that make it possible for you to see and hear me. Director Lisa Brewer is in the control room calling the shots, and if I am in a tense, big-time broadcasting moment, I want Lisa Brewer somewhere close at hand. She is elite. And Editor Paul Mashinsky. Apparently, I have a reputation around here for writing flourishes that seem to defy video linkage. Well, somehow Paul finds a way and makes the top of this program what it is every single week. He is a master. And we are indebted to all of them and send them off with our very best wishes and, more than anything, deep and abiding gratitude. That's our broadcast for this morning. Have a very happy 4th of July. We'll see you next week for Flashpoint.